Hey there, my name is Kaitlyn and I'm going to give my analyzation of Leaf by Niggle by Tolkien. This is Tolkien's allegorical study of a creative's journey from a drab life to the final destination of heaven. It's important to note that Tolkien is a devout Roman Catholic, and though there are many different ways that you can interpret this work, and all can have a hint of being true, I interpreted it as this man's journey from life to death, in purgatory, and eventually reaching heaven. Niggle spends a good chunk of his life, or at least the latter part of it, constructing a giant painting of a tree. But he knows that he will have to take a journey soon. He's close to death. He can't work on the painting as much as he wants to because his neighbor Parish has so many favors that he asks him to do. Niggle is also a great procrastinator and also goes off on a lot of side quests, being overly detailed in one place and not really getting to the entire picture. Eventually the time comes for him to take his journey and he leaves his painting behind. After going through a harsh bout of work in the first stage of purgatory, he grows a work ethic and becomes a better manager of his time. Eventually, he is given access to the next stage, where he sees his tree. I'm going to read to you a quote on page 113 for when he finally sees his tree. Before him stood the tree, his tree, finished. If you could say that of a tree that was alive, its leaves opening, its branches growing and bending in the wind that Niggle had so often felt or guessed, and had so often failed to catch. He gazed at the tree, and slowly he lifted his arms and opened them wide. "It's a gift," he said. He is referring to his art, and also to the result, but he was using the word quite literally. He went on looking at the tree. All the leaves he had ever labored at were there, as he imagined them, rather than as he had made them. Tolkien had a very Platonic understanding. An artist can only create an echo or a shadow of creation. And I'm going to read to you a quote on page 114 now of that idea. This is when Niggle finally sees the mountains that he had imagined before in his painting, but couldn't really quite see exactly what they looked like. And now that he was in this place that he was imagining all this time, he sees the mountains and really understands them more. There were the mountains in the background. They did get nearer, very slowly. They did not seem to belong to the picture, or only as a link to something else. A glimpse to the trees of something different. A further stage. Another picture. So Niggle understood that this glorious realm was there all along, but he knew that it didn't really belong to the picture that he was creating. Where he is right now with the tree and the forest is still a stage of purgatory, and once he gets to that foot of that mountain and he meets the shepherd, those mountains are really what signify heaven. You can see that once Niggle reached the mountains, we jump to a new perspective altogether of a few old men who are discussing the late artist. One particular man, Tompkins, didn't really believe that Niggle was of any use at all. If he was in charge, he would put people like Niggle to use somewhere within the city, within society. He didn't believe that an artist had any semblance of use to society. Adkins disagreed. He was actually enraptured by the painting that Niggle had created. However, most of the painting was used to patch the roof of his neighbor and his own house. Adkins did preserve one singular leaf that hung in the museum, but the museum eventually burned down, and Niggle was forgotten altogether as an artist. There's this idea of legacy. Niggle achieved none of this legacy in his life on Earth, but the work that he did at the foot of heaven became an iconic and sought-after spot for many before reaching the mountains. He did produce a legacy, but one that was only created after he learned how to have a work ethic and took the time to let another man help. On page 115, we see Niggle realizing that he needs a helper. "Of course," he said, "what I need is Parish. There are lots of things about Earth, plants and trees that he knows and I don't. This place cannot be left just as my private park. I need help and advice. I ought to have got it sooner." And you see this just enormous character development through Niggle. throughout the course of the work. But my question for you has to do more with Niggle's life before death, before purgatory, before he reaches heaven, because that's where we are right now. And it's the question of how do we as artists balance doing our creative work, but also being able to do all of the things that we need to get done as individuals and helping our neighbors. Tolkien's whole complaint throughout this is that he doesn't have time to do that, which he believes he should be doing as a co-creator, because there's just so many things that need to get done. So that's my question to you, and thanks for watching the video.